Welcome, welcome, HR leaders from around the globe to Zapier's AI for HR Ask Me Anything. We are, by popular demand, hosting this AMA today for folks who are interested in practical ways to use AI in HR. And also, we're going to talk a bit based on the pre submitted questions about just some of the conditions, cultural, operational, that seem to matter when we're working with our organizations to inspire a culture of learning and skill building related to AI. Really glad that you're here. For the first 60 seconds or so, we're going to let folks come in. We originally offered this conversation as a small format event. I thought maybe we'd have 8 to 10 people, but in fact, at the end of the day, we've had over 1,000 HR leaders RSVP. And so as folks come in, you'll see the chat as part of this event. And why don't you help us warm up here and just add, yep, you're already doing it. Thank you so much. Let us know where you're joining from. I think you'll find we have folks from all over the place: Vancouver and Barcelona, Washington, D.C., and Calgary. We have folks from Denver and Little Rock, Seattle and Columbus, Riverside, California, and Minnesota, Boston. I see some familiar faces as well. It's wonderful to see you. Yes, yes, yes. Sarasota, Chicago, and Austin, India, several folks. Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's where I am today, as a matter of fact. I'm usually in Berkeley, California, but in the summers, we are in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Go Blue. Sicily. I was just in Rome a couple weeks ago. Lovely to see you. San Francisco and Austin again. Columbia, Missouri. Fantastic. Okay. Well, we have more than critical mass, well over 200 folks here within the first 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and get started again. If you are here for and ask me anything about AI for HR, you are in the right place. I'm really thrilled and honored to get to facilitate this with you. My name is Brandon Sammut. I am the Chief People Officer at Zapier. Zapier is an AI orchestration platform all about helping people and organizations use AI and automation in practical and human-centered ways in a way that's really accessible for everyone. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do, a couple of things that'll be helpful for navigating our time together today. One, we are recording this. We had plenty of folks RSVP that can't make it live. We're going to make sure they have access to this. Two, we had almost 200 pre-submitted questions. We're going to answer some of the most thematic ones live today, and then we're going to do live Q&A as well. As we do that, you can drop a question in the chat at any point. We have folks who are going to monitor that. If it's a quick answer, they'll go ahead and put it in the chat itself. If it's something maybe we can cover live, we'll try to do that as well. We'll certainly have more questions than we have time to answer, but we'll probably find an interesting way to get those answers to you asynchronously. And last but not least, we are using a platform that works best on Google Chrome. And so if you're having any technical issues whatsoever and aren't using Chrome, go ahead and try switching over to it. Now, right as we kick off, everything that we're talking about today is the product of many people at Zapier, particularly the folks on our mighty people team. And so I just wanted to start with a thank you. The folks that you see here are folks, actually all of whom joined Zapier before the AI era, but all of whom in really meaningful ways have skilled up and have found incredible ways for them and their teams to use AI in their daily work. Some of those use cases and demos we're actually going to talk about today. And one of the reasons I wanted to start here is because part of what we're seeing with AI, as disorienting and intimidating as it can feel, for me included sometimes, is that the learning curve is not quite as steep as I imagined it would be. And I think we're seeing so many examples right here on our own people team of Zapier of folks learning from peers, self-learning, trying things, experimenting, failing, but then ultimately winning and succeeding in some ways that have been really great for the Zapier team. And also, I think, really motivating for a lot of us as we get to learn new things together. So a big thank you to the many, many folks contributing to everything we're going to talk about today. All right, speaking of, where are we going? One, a lot of folks in the pre-submitted questions asked kind of a basic question, which is, it sounds like Zapier has fairly high adoption of AI in the organization. What's the story behind that? And so we're going to start with a quick mini case study of Zapier's AI adoption journey so far. Two, we did get a lot of pre-submitted questions. We're going to answer the 8 or 9 most thematic questions right now. Then we'll get into as many questions that have been shared live while we're here as we possibly can. And we have a couple of opportunities and calls to action at the end that I'll share if you want to learn more, including an opportunity to actually practice building AI agents with a member of Zapier's people team. So look out for that as we move forward. Okay, now with that being said, let's do the case study. How is it that Zapier over the last 2.25 years has been able to attain about 89% adoption across our 730-person team of AI in our daily work? Let's talk about the story. Now, in March of 2023, this was about 6 months after ChatGPT came onto the scene. And it was very clear that AI was going to be a meaningful way for Zapier to take a step forward in achieving our mission, which is to make automation work for everyone. However, we did not understand how it was going to impact the work that we did. And we felt really strongly that we needed to figure that out as quickly as possible. And so in March of 2023, Wade, our CEO, wrote the post, a blog, internal blog that you see on the screen right now. It's called Zapier Code Red, Competing in an AI First World. And what it said really simply is we think AI is going to influence how we do our work and the ecosystem in which we do it. We don't know exactly how, so let's start learning and building together. I will share with you that this was not a uniformly popular post at the time. There were a lot of questions that we didn't have answers to, and some folks, it made some of our team nervous at the time to be called into something without a full recipe for exactly where we were going or how we were going to get there. We did it anyway, though, because we meant it really sincerely that AI was going to influence how we need to show up for our customers and work towards our mission. And we committed to being really open and working through that together. What did we do practically? So in the weeks that followed, a couple of ingredients that really helped folks kind of build that psychological safety and some of that context and clarity to start building with AI. First, we published AI use guidelines. You might say, well, that seems like a pretty basic and unattractive way to get started, but it was really important. You've probably read some of the research that shows that to maximize folks' creativity, it's actually really helpful for folks to understand the boundaries in which we are allowed to build. It's kind of ironic, right? Like a total blank slate actually can inhibit folks' creativity. And so we did create some of those guardrails. And in doing so, we're able to provide clarity. What tools can you use? What data can come in? Where can you go for questions and so on? Two, one of our approaches here was to embed AI skill building and use case development in as many of Zapier's existing traditions and rituals as possible. AI brought enough change on its own. So instead of creating a bunch of new rituals or process or what have you, we were looking for ways to integrate AI into a lot of the traditions that we already had. And one of those traditions was Hack Week. I think probably a lot of our organizations have a version of this, and we do one quarterly. And so right there in March of 2023, we had a Hack Week coming up, and it became an AI Hack Week. Folks from all over the company were using AI to solve problems, some of which we had been working through for years, and we're looking for a way to unlock more success. An example of success that came from that Hack Week came from our customer support team. For those of you that work with customer support teams, you know that one of the key productivity metrics is how quickly can you solve a customer's problem. Sometimes that's called average ticket handle time. And the team at Zapier have been looking to reduce that time to help customers with their problems faster for years. During this Hack Week, the handful of folks from customer support used AI to code a new application for Zendesk, which is the customer support tool that we use. And in doing so, they created something incredibly helpful. It was trained on a lot of Zapier product context, and it was able to summarize these otherwise very long customer tickets into something very actionable that a customer support person could pick up and work on faster and solve the customer's problem more quickly. You can see on the screen here the prototype of that product, which was made in the span of 4 or 5 days, was called Zen GPT. Well, it was so successful that it is now a product that's used across our whole global support team. It's called Support Sidekick. And it's one of the core ways that our support team has been able to reduce their average ticket handle time by 50% over the last 2 years. Last but not least, I really can't speak highly enough of creating some specific ways for folks to just learn from each other. And in Zapier's case, we just created a couple Slack channels. We're really clear, like, if you have a question, ask it here. We created one for folks who were totally new to AI as well, because we heard from folks that they felt in the main channel where folks were talking about some more technical stuff, like they couldn't kind of elbow their way in with a more basic question. So at least in the first 18 months, we created a kind of a newbies channel as well. And importantly, We asked a couple of our AI power users and effectively gold them. I say, hey, part of your job now is helping folks get answers to their questions in these channels. And in doing so, plenty of examples to share here, including the ones that you see on the screen. Folks were able to, ask anything in a just no pressure, no judgment forum and get a quick answer from someone who's quite skilled in that topic. More recently, just about 60 days ago, we decided that we would start insisting on some degree of AI fluency for every new hire in the company, all roles, 100%. It doesn't matter what level or what team. And we open sourced the framework that we use to effectively assess that in candidates as they're applying to jobs at Zapier. We don't use this as a performance framework inside the company yet, but we do use it internally increasingly just to push our thinking on where we are in our own individual AI journey and how we can all level up over time. And of course, as some of you saw, in doing everything that we just talked about, we've been able to increase everyday use of AI to support folks on their core work and their core goals up to about 89% as of April of this year. We hope and expect that number will be higher when we measure it again in a couple of months. Okay, so with all that being said, that's a mini case study, Zapier's AI adoption journey. No claims to perfection, but because so many folks asked, those are some of the kind of the core details on what we've been up to and what we've been learning the last 2+ years. Now, thank you so much for your questions. We had, again, almost 200 questions pre-submitted. There were some themes, and we're going to answer the kind of most popular questions, and then we'll get into live questions. So there were a couple of questions thematically just about how to get started with AI in HR. What are the ingredients? What are the success factors? Kelly, for example, asked, what were the first 5 actions that Zapier's people team took on our AI journey? And I'll share a couple things to respond to this one. One, I think the actions we took were very similar to what the company was doing overall. And I'll share 6 things actually in particular. I'll share a bonus ingredient as well. These are some of the things that seem to have helped the very most. Okay, so we talked just a moment ago about Wade, our CEO's code red, right? That was effectively the initial why for every single person in the company picking up and finding ways to use AI practically in our daily work. And that's why number 1 is lead with the why. I think that all of our companies already have missions. We have customers or clients or students, depending on the organization. We have goals, we have priorities, and AI is not like a new goal per se. AI is a potential tool, or it's a medium, it's a way that we can possibly take bigger steps forward in achieving those missions and those goals. And I think it's really helpful to anchor a team in our existing why. Why do we wake up every day at work? What are we trying to do in the world? What kind of impact are we trying to have? And then particularly, why is it important that we start puzzling through how AI can help us now? It's not necessarily the case that every organization ought to operate with the same sense of urgency. And so I don't think there's a boilerplate story here. I think it's really important that leadership teams share a organization-specific why for AI, because everything that flows from that in terms of expectations and resources and what have you should flow from just a really concrete story that's grounded in the mission of the company as it already exists. Second ingredient, we talked about a couple of things related to cultural foundations. One of the things that I've heard in talking with HR leaders all over the place the last 6 months is that an AI adoption journey is basically a health check for our organizations. And what I mean by that is that if our organizations already have really clear goals and people know what's truly expected of them, if our organizations have a really strong sense of psychological safety, a strong culture of experimentation, high levels of trust in leadership, then we already have a lot of the core ingredients for leaning into some form of change, including change related to building with AI. If our organizations are not yet strong in some or most of those areas, it will be hard to do what we're talking about today. And so that's why right after leading with the why, some form of health check on the cultural foundations for a big change like an AI transformation is really the very next thing. 3, Provided the foundation is at least mostly in place, it's a great time to start identifying opportunities. And we'll talk in just a few minutes about just a quick framework that anyone can use to identify HR opportunities or any opportunities within an organization and start prioritizing those. And that's ultimately pretty important, right? Because there are so many ways that you can use AI. And the goal is not to use AI for its own sake, right? Again, AI is a tool, it's not an outcome. And so it really comes down to like, what are the, depending on the size of your team, the one, the three, the five, like biggest opportunities that we see that we're going to go experiment with. Speaking of experimentation, number four, sharing small wins quickly. I remember when our team was starting to first build with AI, I remember a couple of those first wins, and we shared them broadly, including all the hard work and the kind of mini failures that happened along the way. Really helpful to normalize that this stuff is new. It's not always easy, but where we have success, we want to share the success, but we also want to share the journey there to normalize the puzzling through and the challenge. Speaking of that, number five, essential to recognize and reward the team's learning along this journey, not just the wins. We talked about that just a moment ago, but I put it as a number five, like a bonus, because I think it's just that important. And number six, like with any kind of major change in an organization, it's really helpful to be candid about what we don't know yet, and this includes all of us as HR leaders. I think it's ironically one of the best ways that we can maintain and extend trust with our organizations. Say like, hey, that's an interesting question, or hey, I don't know if AI can help there, or hey, like I don't know how to build that yet. And I think that yet is really the operative word there. Like all things are doable over time, with the right focus and resources and culture. But including as Zapier today, like we have all kinds of open questions, and so do I, about exactly how we could and should be building with AI, and normalizing openness and transparency around that. I think avoids like some of these notions of like hand waving that can happen when people are asked to do something new and we're not really sure how to do it yet. Here are a couple just practical screen captures from Slack at Zapier of some of those practices in motion. The one at the very top is a ritual, AI all hands that we do every week where folks can join. You can think about it like AI office hours, includes a bunch of our power users. Folks can join with questions, puzzles, challenges, things that really worked. And it's effectively a weekly swap meet for all of that. In the bottom left, you'll see an example of a question that someone asked in one of our channels, get a snappy response to something to unblock them from building with AI. And then on the bottom right, you'll see an example of one of our most senior leaders recognizing someone for something that they experimented with. Along the way, we've got a lot of stuff to figure out within Zapier's people team on this topic, but I'm really proud of what the team's been building the last 2 years. And here you'll see some examples of some of the automations and agents that the team has built to support us in showing up for our team, enabling folks at Zapier to thrive in the work that we do across everything from onboarding, employee retention and recognition, talent development and performance management, and the list goes on and on. Okay. Halisa asked a question around getting started with AI and HR, like what workflows or what use cases should you tackle first? And I don't think there's like a specific set of use cases that every team should start with first, but I think there's a useful framework for figuring out in each of our organization's contexts where some of the initial and ultimate opportunities are. And here's a framework for that. So you'll probably recognize the basic contours of this one. This is an impact and effort 2x2 with impact on the x-axis and effort on the y-axis. And if you go to the bottom left, things that are low effort and low impact, you might look there and be like, well, why would you spend any time like building use cases that are low impact? Because sometimes they're some of the easiest ones to pull off. And when a team is just getting started with AI and automation too, it can be helpful to get some of those quick wins. Low impact does not mean no impact. And I'll share a couple of examples of that. It's actually use cases that I built when I was early in my journey that I would put in like the kind of low effort, low impact quadrant that really built my own confidence in what we're talking about today. Now, as the team starts to build some of that confidence in AI fluency, you can move over to the lower right here. Use cases that still may be relatively low effort but have higher impact. These are usually places where the answers may be a little bit less obvious, some experimentation is required, but really in that case, we're refining existing process to get some incremental improvements. This is time well spent, to be clear. Again, low effort, you you can get some real impact here. Now, on the top right, high effort, high impact. These are the highest complexity use cases we can possibly think of with big payoffs if we get it right. Most of our teams, including the team at Zapier, haven't necessarily unlocked a bunch of these yet. This is our frontier as well. And the reason I think this is really the frontier or kind of the mountaintop for a lot of what we're talking about today is that in this quadrant, I think we're largely thinking about transformational AI use cases. These would be use cases that are not just making the work we do better as we understand it today, but are really inspiring us to kind of redesign the work itself from the ground up using the technology that's now available. Okay, I mentioned earlier about this like kind of like low impact, low effort use cases. I'll share two that I got started with when I joined Zapier, really at each end of the employee experience. So one thing that's interesting about both of these, by the way, is that neither of them use AI. These are automations, and automation can be really helpful. Why? Because sometimes you want something done exactly the same way every time. I don't want an LLM to get creative with it. I want it to be very consistent and reliable. And at the beginning of the employee experience, we had a lot of people joining the company, and I wanted to welcome them when they started, but inevitably, like I just would not have time to do that. And so I created an automation to do so. And it just welcomes every person to the company when they join using their start date from our HRIS, and it drops it in Slack. Now, you might be looking at this and saying like, Brandon, that's a really impersonal way to welcome people to the company. And I kind of felt that way too when I was first building this, but as I've seen it in action, I kind of disagree with myself or the early version of myself for two reasons. The first is these are folks that have joined the company. Like I haven't in almost every case met them yet. I don't have personalized context. I can't personalize these welcomes. I don't really know these folks yet. I'm just saying hello and welcome, to the company. So there isn't really an opportunity to personalize at this point. But the bigger reason why I think that this is better than the alternative is because the alternative of an automation like this, for me at least, isn't doing it by hand. It's not doing it at all, just for lack of time and bandwidth. And so, ironically, this automation is more personal than my alternative, which is not welcoming folks in this way at all. Let's talk about an automation at the very end of the employee experience. So, we have folks leave the company, including lots of folks on really good terms that we want to stay in touch with. And I think we do a decent job of really recognizing folks when they leave the company. I was looking for a way to stay in touch with folks a couple months after they left, not right away. And so I set up an automation here with help from Taylor, one of our people ops technology leaders, that looks at exit dates in our HRIS. It filters for folks who left voluntarily and regrettably. So I'm kind of filtering for folks who left on the very best of terms. And it checks that we have a personal email for them in our HRIS. And then it waits 60 days after their exit date. And when that 60-day mark passes, it puts a draft email to them in my inbox. Now, why doesn't it just send the email? Well, in this case, these are folks in many cases I know. I've worked with in some way. I do have some personal context, and I would like to include that. But it's really nice for me to have a reminder that they left a couple months ago and to have a running start on checking in and seeing how things are going with them. And so when these land in my draft emails, I can look through them. If I know someone or have like a memory I want to share, something I feel really thankful for in terms of the work they did, I'll add that sentence or two in there, and then I go ahead and send it. And the replies that you get back, you can imagine, are very personal, a great way to stay connected with alumni of the organization. So again, two use cases. I would consider these, low effort. They didn't seem low effort at the time. Like I need some help pulling these off now. I would consider them low effort for my skill level today. That I think matter. Right? You could argue like those are pretty low impact relative to some of the bigger things that we're trying to all build in our organizations. And I would probably agree with you. But again, low impact does not mean no impact. These things matter. And ironically, there are ways that automation and AI can actually improve connection and personalization rather than take away from it. Okay. A couple questions around just AI literacy and change management for what we're working on in our companies with AI. So Anne asked, how do you educate teams to prepare for ongoing AI-driven change, and what programs support that psychological shift? I love this question. I'll share a couple of success factors here. Oh, and again, by the way, we're going to share all of this content. So if you're like screen grabbing or taking notes, don't worry, it's all coming back to you for your use. So 6 things in particular. Again, like we talked about earlier, like grounding this in the company's existing context. That really helps remind folks that we're not turning the company upside down culturally or operationally. AI, we think, is a way for many of our organizations to take a big step forward in the things that we already care about. Moving over to the right, AI is an enhancer. Again, AI is a tool, it's not an outcome. And I think it's really important. Like, what is the head and what is the tail? Like, mission, value, goals. That is the head of the organization. AI does not displace that. AI is the tail. It's a medium or a way that maybe we can accelerate our progress. Top right, AI needs to be applied. There's a lot of, like we talked about earlier, like hand waving, and there's just a lot going on right now. Like if you're in LinkedIn or at a conference, just like AI left and right, it's hard to make, even for me, like to make sense of like what we should be paying attention to. And there too, it's like, hey, we're not starting from scratch here. We already have goals. We already have things that we're trying to do with our teams, whether it's related to recruiting and onboarding, talent management, staffing location strategy. Again, AI is the tail. It's not the head of what we're doing. And so prioritizing use cases based on, ROI to the organization, just like we would anything else, is helpful. And again, this is another example of where we can use existing ways of thinking about how we prioritize and how we get work done, how we show up for people, rather than feeling like we're starting from scratch. Lower left, clarity on expectations. Just be really clear about what it means to be using AI. Like, is it like, do I have to use AI, or do I use AI if I think it can help? Am I going to be evaluated on my skillfulness with AI or not? If so, is it now? Is it later? And why? Just clarity on all that. And by the way, like we talked about, we won't all have all the answers to these questions right now. And it's not only okay, I think it, again, really does extend trust to say, that's a great question. We don't have an answer to that yet. Here's when we're going to like sit down to work through it, and we'll be really open with our thinking along the way, and we'll share where we come at. Fifth, again, like folks in our organizations, yours too, I imagine, have lots of questions about how AI may influence jobs over time. And this is another place where if you have an answer to that question for a specific part of the organization, be clear. And if you don't, which is probably the case in most of our contexts, at least for many teams or roles, say we don't know yet. But I think what we can do, we can say what we do know. An interesting example of this in action is on Zapier's customer support team. Customer support is a type of team where a lot of folks see new technologies, claiming to be able to turn all of your customer support over to AI and what have you. And it makes a lot of folks in support nervous, naturally, right? And when folks ask these questions of our support leader, I really respected her approach. And she effectively said this. She said, hey, like, we have no plans to like trim the size of this team right now. I can make no claims about what that looks like over the long term, as would be the case at any point. If someone asked that question 3 years ago, pre-generative AI, the answer would have been the same, which like can't predict the future. But what I really respect about how she responded to those questions, she said, but what we are doing is we're going to invest in ourselves. We are going to learn how to be truly elite in customer support using AI. And so wherever we go and the size of this team and who's here and who's at some other company, like we are going to invest in ourselves. So we are the best of the best in the thing that we do, including with AI. And you will see us investing in this entire team. And I will tell you, I think she and the team have really followed through on that. And lastly, celebrating experimentation. I think this is one of the core culture components. It's so important that in our engagement surveys for the last couple of years, we actually ask a distinct question about whether folks feel kind of safe and equipped to experiment at Zapier. Okay, let's talk about some use cases. So Jessica asks, can you walk us through your most transformative AI use case in HR, ideally one we can implement ourselves? So I will share a couple demos right now around the same overall topic, which is around performance evaluations and performance enablement in general. This is an area where there's generally a lot of anxiety, a lot of ambiguity, and it's really hard to create like a type of performance evaluation experience that people feel is really clear and really helpful developmentally and also very fair. That's what we've been building towards for years. We have not always gotten it right, but AI has given us some interesting ways to take a step forward, and share a couple of examples here. Okay. So first, just some screen captures, but then we will do some live demos. So on the left-hand side, you'll see an agent that we'll do a live demo of that gets underneath one of the problem spaces that our L&D team identified in performance management, performance evaluations, which is, a performance evaluation or even a performance conversation, even if it's not like a formal written document, is grounded in evidence, right? The quality of the evidence has a lot to do with the quality of the feedback that you're getting, right? If the evidence is kind of spotty, incomplete, or kind of anchored kind of over indexed in one area over the other in a way that doesn't represent, kind of the true body of someone's work, then the performance review or the feedback that someone's getting is going to reflect that, and it'll be suboptimal as a result. And so we'll look in a minute at an agent that helps collect performance evidence across a period, like a 6-month period, whatever the period is, so that when you sit down to write a performance review for a direct report or to write your own self-evaluation, which is the demo that I'll do in a minute, you have a running start. Like, you have a much more balanced, comprehensive base of evidence to go with. On the right-hand side, you'll see something we won't demo, but is also very much related to kind of performance enablement and enabling high-performing teams, which is goals. If you've looked at goals across your organization, you probably noticed some of them are of extraordinary quality, very specific, time-bound, and measurable, and some of them probably aren't. Our L&D team created basically a goaling coach that folks can use when they're writing their performance goals, that's trained on Zapier specific strategy, and our norms around what a great goal looks like. I will tell you, the person that developed this put it together, I think probably in well under an hour, and then it scales to the whole company immediately. And it can provide coaching to our people, not only on the framing of a goal, but also how to make sure that it clearly connects to the company's overall priorities and strategy, which again is another element of just a good goal, because it helps folks really anchor themselves in the purpose of what they're doing, not just the specificity of what the goal is, which can really help with engagement. So that's that. Let's go ahead and do a demo here. So a couple things. We're going to come back to this first one. So in addition to the goals coach, the AI goals coach, we also have an AI coach for actually writing our biannual performance reviews. And that's what we're looking at here. You can see right here, it says our performance reviews are called impact reviews. You can see a little bit of context. One thing that's really important with these that I think extends trust in how these are used is that whenever we're creating something like this, we try to be really clear about like what data is being stored or not stored. If it is being stored, who gets to see it? If it is being seen by humans, in what ways, if any, is it being used? Right. So a lot of transparency around that upfront, I think, really encourages folks to feel like they have the psychological safety to use something like this. And you'll see here, there are a couple of different coaches. There's one for managers, writing for ICs, direct reports, and so on. Underneath, this is the most important part. These coaches are trained on Zapier's effectively competencies, that we call them impact behaviors, kind of our core expectations that are differentiated by job level and by IC and manager track. It's also trained on several things around like what a great performance review looks like, how to frame it and anchor it in specific evidence, and so on. We'll come back to that because, again, before we're writing a performance review or giving someone structured feedback, it really all comes down to the quality of the evidence that we are thinking about when we're writing it. And for that, we're actually going to look at an AI and an agent. This is an agent developed by a member of our L&D team, Emily Maybe. And again, like everything we're looking at today, this is not developed by engineers or IT people or quote unquote AI experts. These are developed by people who have become skillful in AI right here on our own people team. So let's take a look. So this agent is just called Performance Review Assistant. Anyone at Zapier can copy this template. In fact, you can copy it too if you'd like to try it using Zapier. And on the left-hand side here, you'll see the prompt, right? You are an AI designed to summarize Slack threads for tracking my performance. When I react to a thread, analyze the conversation. Then what happens? It provides kind of a structure for how do I want you to summarize it? Like, what's the structure for that? And then last, I'm like, hey, when you do that, please put it in a specific Google Doc that I can come back to when I'm writing my performance review, right? Like, I would like to have it all in one place when I sit down. That's effectively what this is. And you'll see, like, it's not a long prompt. Now, this agent has a trigger. The trigger is a emoji in Slack. And it's one called Blob Notes, and I'll show it to you in a minute. Effectively, every time anywhere in Slack I see something related to my performance, that I want to remember and account for, I just use this emoji. And it knows that anytime I use this emoji, it's going to do the thing that I'm asking it to do in the prompt, which is to summarize what that's all about in a way that I can use when I'm writing my self-evaluation. So that's the trigger. And then we already know what we've asked it to do when that trigger happens. Now let's do the demo. So this is Slack. This is live Slack at Zapier. I picked like a semi-recent piece of like little recognition moment from Wade about something I was working on. It's great right now. We got, oh, great, React sheet, love it. Little Brandon React sheet. I'm going to add blob notes. There it is. Super cute, right? Blob notes. Going to click that. And what's going to happen is that what I've done is this is my Google Doc. This is where I've pointed the agent to drop into feedback every time I use that React sheet. And you can see some examples from the past. So here's a piece of evidence from March of this year. It explains what the feedback or the accomplishment was about. It provides a little context on like, wait, what was going on in that thread, generally speaking. And you can see a couple more examples. Now check this out. And this is one of the most amazing things I have found when building with AI, which is you'll notice that in these first few examples that I had the agent record, it doesn't include a link to the Slack message. So it's really hard for me to go back and like find like, well, what was the original thing? So I just changed the prompt. So if we go back here, and now you can see starting with this evidence right here, it includes a link at the very bottom. So, all that someone needs to do, you go back to the prompt, and I just added this single sentence to the format. Said, hey, last thing, when you do it, just include a link to the Slack message. No code, no like technical, like special magical way to do that, just natural language. Please help me with this. And so you'll see all this evidence from this point forward includes a link to the Slack. And in fact, if we keep going, you'll see the summary of what I just clicked on over here. So here's Wade. Thank you, Brandon, for working on this Zapier on Zapier project. And then while we've been talking, it dropped in a summary here of what Wade really meant so that I can hold on to it for when I write my review. Now, coming back full circle, this is far from a complete like summary of performance evidence, but if I took a version of this that was comprehensive and I came back to where we started and I was writing my self-review, I would use this coach. Say, what's your name and job level? And say, Brandon. Great. And then it'd say, hey, like, why don't you share with me your evidence? And this is where it all comes first full circle, right? I'm just going to paste in this evidence. I'm not going to format it or anything like that. I'm just dropping it in. It'll know what to do. Now, importantly, as this is compiling, I want to make a point, which is that the human in the loop matters here. I would never submit a self-evaluation or a performance review for one of my direct reports simply using the output from a coach. But wow, can it give me a really nice running start and also check me on some things that I don't always do really well, like connecting evidence that I want to kind of praise my direct reports for back to our impact behaviors and so on. That's exactly what it's doing here. By the way, it's also trained to monitor word count. We've been working across the company to like help folks write more compact reviews so that, and what have you. And so if you're like, well, that's not very long, well, like part of that's a product of me not giving it, 6 months worth of evidence, but part of it's also a product of what we've trained it on to help make those reviews really succinct. Okay, so all that to say, I hope that's helpful in terms of a demo of how an agent can be helpful and kind of an age-old performance enablement topic that a lot of us work on. Okay. Katine asked a question around how Zapier has used AI agents to improve employee onboarding for new hires and their managers. And I have some context I can share here. So a couple things, and I'm going to do this. Okay. Today, we use automation and AI to sequence and personalize various parts of the onboarding experience based on role and what have you. And in doing so, we're able to make onboarding more than just a 3 or a 5 or even a 10-day experience, but there are elements of onboarding that get kind of sequenced when it matters most, even months after someone joins the company. Now, most of that isn't AI, it's actually automation. And it's another example of where AI and automation are complements, not necessarily substitutes for one another. The biggest opportunity we see in terms of using AI and agents for onboarding, we actually previewed with the company, and this is actually an actual live internal blog at Zapier, something we're building right now, we're calling Onboarding Assistant. And we talked earlier about anchoring the AI building that we all do in problems, right? Existing problems that we've been working on for years, right, within our HR teams. The same thing applies here. And so when someone on our people team is talking about building with AI, we're really challenging ourselves. Start with the problem statement, not with what you're going to build. Start with the problem statement. And so here you see Rita starting with the problem statement. Hiring managers waste hours hunting for scattered interview notes to craft personalized onboarding, especially when start dates slip. And what is the prospective solution? An onboarding agent that automatically gathers those insights into a tailored onboarding plan so managers can welcome new hires faster and better. So that's what we're playing for here. We have a prototype. We're not finished building it yet, but I'm willing to bet that Rita and Ashley and our mighty people team will figure it out in pretty short order. Okay. If you are interested in more use cases, I just did a podcast called HR Heretics. That covers even more. These are live use cases, like a 40-minute podcast, and all we're doing is talking about use cases. We also talk a little bit about Zapier's AI fluency framework that we have now when we're considering folks for 100% of roles that we're hiring into the company. So a couple things to dig into there. Okay, there were a couple of questions too about strategic perspective in measuring ROI. So Ayelet asks, what does 89% AI adoption really mean at Zapier? How do you measure impact and outcomes? So a couple things here. Adoption has been our focus for most of the last 2.25 years. And adoption for us means using AI in practical ways to boost your performance and the things that already matter to you at the company, your existing goals, your existing purpose at the company. So nothing new in terms of like kind of our existential reason for being here, but how can AI help, and are folks finding practical ways for AI to do that? That's how we define adoption. And so when you see the 89%, that means that effectively 9 out of 10 folks at Zapier have found ways to boost their performance within the things that they're already accountable to using AI. Now, I would consider that a little bit different. Now, so, okay, actually, let's go back to this fluency framework for a second. Focus on these bottom 3 in the lighter cells in particular. Again, we're using this framework when we're considering hiring folks to join the company. Over time, we would expect that we would use this as a way to kind of like self-assess ourselves as existing members of the team as well. So just to give you an example, someone that we would consider capable has maybe some of the skills, but hasn't necessarily found a lot of practical ways to have impact in their daily performance. Adoptive, that's where we have folks that have in fact found ways to use AI to increase their performance in their core work. Personally, over the last 12 months, I feel like I've started to make the journey from capable to adoptive. I would not consider I've made the journey to transformative. In transformative, that's our highest bar. That's where folks have, folks in teams, not just people, but teams, have basically redesigned the work itself to have massively more impact than we thought was possible using AI. And again, we're just getting started. I wouldn't say that we have many examples of that at Zapier today, but I think that's part of what's helpful about this framework is it calls us into a higher bar for what we're trying to learn and do here. And similarly, as a great quote that Ryan, one of our teammates, reminded me of earlier this week from William Gibson that I think is very applicable to what a lot of us are experiencing with AI right now, which is that the future is in some ways already here. I think we see examples of it every day, but it is definitely not yet evenly distributed. And I think as HR leaders, we have a massive opportunity to make sure that the way AI is used and the way that we skill the team around it is in fact evenly distributed across our entire companies. Doing so will help our companies be more successful, but I also think this is one of our contributions to the team itself to make sure that everyone who works in our organizations over the next couple of years can say, hey, it was at this place, that invested in me, that enabled me to be truly remarkable in the thing that I do. And part of that was because of how they invested in me using AI in my daily work. Ashley asks, similarly, how does Zapier decide where to use humans and where to use AI? And what does that mean for the future of the org chart? So here's a framework that I think is quite helpful. And we've talked over the course of some of these demos, right? Some of which are like pure automations, for example. Now you see that on the left-hand side here, the workflow, that's like an automation. No AI involved all the way on the left-hand side, purely deterministic, works exactly the same way every time. If you go all the way on the right-hand side to true agents, purely driven by AI, using mainly like inference and pattern matching to get things done. Um, I will tell you that at Zapier, at least, and it'd be interesting if you all have some to share your perspectives in the chat. We don't use any of this to make employment decisions. We do use it in many cases to help us, to help the humans make better employment decisions. And by employment decisions, we mean things like who we hire, who we promote, who gets what pay raise, performance ratings. These moments that really matter. And I think it's really important for humans to be accountable. In fact, our CTO Brian Helming has a great saying that just really sticks with me that I'd love to share with you. That when it comes to AI and automation, he says you can delegate the work, but you can't delegate the accountability. You can delegate the work, but you can't delegate the accountability. And for that reason, at least at Zapier, you'll find that we keep humans in the loop for all these core employment decisions. But we are using automation AI to help us make sure that we have like good evidence for those decisions that actually improves human decision quality. So hopefully that's helpful in responding to that question. It's a great one. Security and trust. This was a big theme as well. How do you ensure sensitive HR data is used securely when deploying AI workflows and agents? For this, I'm going to draw inspiration from, I think, just some great guidance from leaders like Taylor Z, our HR technology leader, as well as Maggie Roque, our director of diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity, among many others, our IT team. I would tell you, generally speaking, all of our companies can lean on a lot of our existing data privacy, security, IT, and procurement frameworks. AI is a new technology, but how it actually operates and what some of the risks are here are not necessarily new. So when we're thinking about deploying AI for HR workflows, we're thinking about many of the same things we would think about when we would be in the market buying a new HRIS or a new applicant tracking system. How is data handled? What protections are in place? What certifications are in place? Who has access to the data? Do we have observability into what's going on within the product? What are the administrative controls available to our technology owners for that product, and so on? And then the last thing I think is even more applicable to AI, but would apply if we were onboarding a new HRS or applicant tracking system, is a lot of testing. And so, there's a lot of sense of urgency and speed around building with AI right now. But I think that the fundamentals still apply here, and I have a lot of respect for the folks on Zapier's people team who make sure that we're doing our homework on how we're using AI, and that in particular we're testing to make sure that we're getting the results that we expect and not some of the unintended side effects. Okay, you've heard a lot from me. I'm going to pass the microphone to someone who can answer this question much better than I. It's a really neat question. Edward asks, with the rise of AI-assisted interviews, what measures has Zapier put in place to detect and deter candidate fraud? And for that, I'm going to pass it over to Tracy St. Deek, our global head of talent.
Thanks, Brandon. So candidate fraud is certainly accelerating with the use of AI. And even on our team, we've seen multiple examples of that this week. So we're implementing measures in multiple places in our hiring funnel. So obviously there's a spectrum of fraud, right? You have candidates who are simply misleading about their skills and experiences. Then you have people utilizing AI in live interviews for coaching, for answers. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum, malicious attempts to gain access to systems. So a few concrete things that we're doing at Zapier to sort of try to intervene for each of those different situations. So first, we assume that all candidates will use AI in our process, and we encourage it. So by embracing the fact that they use it, we honestly worry less about catching the cheating. So even our skills tests, even our engineering tests, we encourage AI use, and we've shifted our live interviews to focus on how, when, and why candidates use AI, and have a really robust discussion on its limitations and how they use it, versus focusing on them creating a product that they could honestly plug into ChatGPT. We also, on this front, added a candidate integrity statement on all of our applications that says that the ideas should be their own, the experiences should be accurate, and if caught intentionally misleading us, they're going to be banned from applying for a job at Zapier now and in the future. And we think this encourages really serious candidates to use AI in smart ways. A couple of other things we do going up the spectrum of fraud cases, we use Bright Hire, which is a live interview platform. So our interviews are recorded, and this allows us to compare visual recordings. And they're working on ways to automatically detect discrepancies in voice and images between interviews. So that helps our recruiters catch things mid-process. Another thing we've done is we've built an internal Zap that enriches candidates' IP addresses and phone numbers, compares that to their stated location and their actual location, flags mismatches, checks for internet-based phone numbers like in Google Voice, and then flags it for a recruiter with next steps on which to take. And then finally, we've also implemented at Zapier live reference checks, at least one for every hire. And that helps curb fraudulent candidates as well, alongside our normal reference check platform, background checks, and things like that. So we've implemented it in multiple ways, and we're training up our team and interviewers on flags and how to follow up on them. But it is accelerating, and it's something that I think we're going to have to dynamically continue to monitor and to equip ourselves to be able to tackle it.
Thanks so much, Tracy. In fact, I believe it was just yesterday morning that we had, I think maybe one of our first AI video deep fakes in an interview. How about that? Caught it. That's great. But
Okay.
yeah, really, really admire the work that you and the team are doing. And thanks for the question, Edward.
Of course.
Okay. Now, folks have asked, like, where do we go from here if we want to do some practical building? I mentioned this earlier, but yes, Emily Maybe from Zapier's own people team is hosting a live builder session where you can build your first or next HR AI agent. Again, this is a hands-on workshop where you will actually be building with Emily. And a QR code for that is right here on the slide. If I advance it too quickly, you'll see it in a follow-up email from our conversation today. So no worries if you don't capture it. I'll leave it up for just another moment. But yes, I think this is this is worth it. In fact, I had an agent builder kind of troubleshooting question for Emily just earlier today, and she helped me navigate it brilliantly. In addition, folks were really curious about use cases. And so as a follow-up, we're going to share a basically open source booklet of like a whole other batch of our top HR use cases, AI or AI and automation use cases for inspiration. And if there's something you don't see in there that you'd like us to build and offer for you and your team, you should just let us know. And by let us know, I would mean, I think for now, you can just tell me on LinkedIn and we'll go from there. We'll find a better way to do that over time. But again, if you see something missing there that really matters for your team from an ROI point of view, an impact point of view, please let me know and we'll build it for you. Last but not least, we have our annual user event. It's a virtual event that's open to everyone. It's free on September 25. I will have at least one kind of HR related builder session as part of that. And so if you're looking for yet another way for you or invite folks from your team to learn more, build more, get more inspiration, this will be another opportunity as well. Okay, we have 7 minutes to go, and I think we are ready to do some live Q&A as much as we can before we wrap. And I will look for some direction on what we should talk about.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Ryan. I'm on the marketing team. Going to help Brandon out here. Brandon, let's run through these as quickly as we can. Like you said, we got 7 minutes. If folks want to go to the questions tab, you can upvote questions, and that helps us out. Ave here has got a question on, actually, are there any use cases you've attempted, but they didn't work? Or maybe you learned we weren't ready for that use case. And what are the takeaways from any of those that come to mind?
Oh, sure. There's plenty. I'll give you a couple examples. Last year, as part of our performance evaluation, I actually tried to build a piece of software using AI rather than going outside to an external tool, because we were looking to do something like very specific that I don't think was like super well met in the market at the price point we were looking for. And that did not work. I used primarily AI for it, and it got a little too creative. It was not consistent enough. We were basically trying to do some forms of like talent placement. And it was one of those things where, like, at the surface level, it looked pretty interesting, but when you really got into it from a reliability perspective, it did not meet the moment. So we experimented. We did it pretty quickly, and then we dropped it. So that's probably like one of the bigger examples that I can think of from the recent past.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's just try things, and then you can always pull them back. I think that's like the best way to learn. Okay, we got a question here from Scott. Seen posts about AI fluency. Obviously, we talked about it a little bit. You even referenced this a little bit, but do you want to talk about how we're kind of starting to not just define internal expectations, but build out the competencies, the skills, and even starting to bring them maybe into like performance reviews and frameworks and ladders and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So we talked about this notion of impact behaviors earlier, which is effectively our competency framework that's differentiated by job level and track. Now, when it comes down to it, we have like an overall expectation that folks are finding practical ways to use AI in their daily work, and that's a shared expectation across all levels and roles. And then similarly for managers, we have expectations around like creating a culture where folks can like learn, build, and experiment. Now that's overall, but certainly including AI. So those are expectations that we have today. What we have not yet done is gold people on like how many things to build with AI or exactly what to build with AI. And that is actually intentional. That is actually intentional. I don't know if that would change in the future. I haven't thought too far ahead because things are moving so quickly. But for now, I like where we are, being really clear that we expect folks to be finding ways to use AI to supercharge their daily work. But that, from the tops down, we won't make claims to how much of the work, how soon, and so on. And over time, though, I would expect that teams would be bridging more into that transformative zone where teams are reimagining a core work from the ground up. We're just getting started there. And in fact, Tracy, who we heard from earlier, has a really interesting vision around that for talent acquisition that maybe we should offer as a follow-up workshop.
Nice. I wrote my mid-year performance review yesterday, and I looked at the chart and I basically assessed myself as capable. And so I said in ways to improve in Q3, I'm going to come up with 3 workflows that are more exemplary of or better examples of adoptive. And so it was actually really nice to just say, I think this is where I'm at. Here's where I can get to next. Here's my goal for Q3.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's the perfect example of what we're trying to do here, right? As soon as we start goaling folks and like you must be at this level by this date or something like that, we start to lose the ability to just talk really openly about where we're at and what we're struggling with, and that's we really want that right now. It's like the pace of learning is what we think matters most right now, not necessarily like tacking to like a specific quantitative outcome for certain roles or what have you. I just don't think we have that level of clarity yet.
Totally. Yeah. And there's no like judgment for me not to do 3 in Q3, but I have it set for my own kind of pace. Nice. Kind of somewhat related. We got 2 minutes here. I like this one as well because it's related. It's from Bob. Is there anything that we're doing on a pre-hire assessment or structured way around assessing candidates' literacy, fluency, et cetera?
Great question. Bob, we might want to get Tracy back up here to speak to this one.
Happy to speak to it. Thanks, Bob. So we are doing a number of things within our hiring process too to assess AI fluency. So first, we ask a question in our application. We also ask questions in our recruiter screen to get an initial read on where people fall in that spectrum. Our skills tests have been redone to include an AI fluency component, and that's different by role, obviously, more technical roles versus we have a non-technical or a default test for more non-technical roles, such as tax accountants and people team roles, which really encourages people to think about how you could envision using AI in your workflows and start to understand how that could actually supercharge your own work. And that's different for individual contributors and managers. And then in our last executive interview, we ask another question around AI fluency as well. So we're assessing it throughout parts of the funnel, but also throughout the way. And I think this is really important, is we're also giving our candidates opportunities to learn more about AI tools, our own AI tools on Zapier, and to honestly kind of learn along the way throughout our process. We want candidates to not only meet our high bar for AI fluency, but also be supported to be able to meet it, even if that's through our process and they come in with very low AI fluency. We want them to be able to build their own knowledge in the tools, whether it's for Zapier and a job with us or another role in the future.
I love it. Well, while I have you both here, I'll maybe ask you both the same question. We'll wrap it since we're at the top of the hour. What advice do you have for the audience here? What should they go do today, tomorrow? And we'll wrap it there.
Gosh, I would say you'll have the last word, Teresa. I would just say, again, AI is a tool. It's not an outcome. None of our companies are starting from scratch here, even if it feels that way, because this is all about figuring out how a new technology can help us do the things that we already think matter most in terms of our mission and what we're all waking up to do every day.
Hmm. That's a good one. I would say have a vision and philosophy for where the human should be in the loop and where it doesn't need to be in the loop. And even if the technology isn't there yet, because in a lot of cases it's not, the technology will get there very quickly. And so rather than being reactive to what like shiny new tool is on the market, and if you could use it within your processes, if you start with a vision and philosophy of how you want to use AI in the future, then when the technology gets there, you'll be ready to meet it and it will feel really seamless in your overall vision for your people team.
Such great advice. Brandon, you want to sign us off and we'll close down the event?
I sure will. I'll end with just a huge thank you. A lot of gratitude. There's so much interest in this. We learn a lot from everyone's questions and the ideas that you've shared in the chat. So thank you. I hope this has been a practical workshop, like what this can look like in action, things we're learning along the way, and also just an encouragement to you in terms of what are some of the cultural components seem to be helping the most. Meanwhile, you'll get an email with opportunity to join Emily's AI Agent Builder workshop, as well as the HR use cases with AI. And then last but not least, we have Zap Connect on September 25, where we'll be doing at least one more AI for HR related workshop. So good to see you all from around the world. We'll catch you next time.